Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your Chief Security Fanatic here, and today we are talking about cybersecurity's fatal flaw, and that is executive resistance to bad news. Now, I ripped this title off 100% from a Forbes article by Noah Barsky, and I can tell you from personal experience dealing with non-technical executives, he totally nailed it. And I'm going to quote his article a little bit here before I dive into my own thing, and I quote, "Technically, it's IT system risk, but CIOs must help the board understand how these risks can affect company reputation. Breaches undermine marketplace trust, generate regulator inquiries, and can potentially result in litigation from customers, suppliers, business partners, or shareholders. Such insights can also inform and guide the board's risk mitigation funding decisions. If you explain risks in terms they understand, show them that risk exists, and how additional funds can help reduce risk, that's something easy for boards to grasp," Cohen detailed. "Ultimately, the board will elect to accept the risk or direct budgets to reduce potential exposure revealed by near misses." And this is absolutely 100% true. This is something I talk about all the time. Very few organizations, especially when I'm walking into them, and oftentimes when I'm walking into them, they're in the middle of a data breach or it's just starting. They're not really understanding the reputational risk that they have as an organization for things like lack of transparency, the breach of trust that they are about to level on the world of their clients and customers and everything else. This is a huge, huge problem that we have. And part of this issue, and Mr. Barsky touches on this just a little bit here, is that we have a very, very serious problem with what I perpetually call, and I mentioned this in my second TED Talk, nerd to English translation. If we cannot properly convey as IT and cybersecurity executives the risk to the organization, then it becomes very difficult basically to get it funded when, quite frankly, it needs to be funded. I have been in cybersecurity for decades at this point, and I was a redheaded stepchild in the room for years and years and years until about 2015 or so, when the world started changing and the world started seeing disinformation campaigns and ransomware explosions and hacking of IoT devices and everything else. And then it became hearts and minds. Then phone calls were less reactive and more proactive, meaning I just saw a competitor breached and I don't want to be them. We have a real opportunity here in the cybersecurity community to secure the entire planet, but we need the buy-in of those non-technical executives. And sure, they know how to use computers and all of that, but they're not in IT and they're not in cybersecurity, and we need their help because oftentimes it's not the CIO that's running the purse strings. Oftentimes the CIO is pigeonholed under the CFO, or the VP of technology is pigeonholed under the finance department, and that oftentimes really hamstrings the ability to properly defend an organization. And as I counsel the CIOs that I work with and the CISOs that I work with as well, I basically lay it out in this way. If you think about it, the CEO of the organization is going to have a vision for the next 5 years or so of where that company is going to go, and he or she wants to get that company there on the right track. The CFO's job is to fund that. The CIO's job is to make sure that the technology, in other words, the engine of that company's economy, is going to be maintained and it is going to expand as that company grows, as that company needs it, and it's going to continue to adapt to their marketplace. The CISO or CISO is essentially the shield. Every car needs airbags, seatbelts, and early warning detections. That's the CISO's job. And if that's not properly conveyed to say, look, we have this certain amount of risk, whether it's from phishing, so we need employee training, whether it's from hacking, so we need good vulnerability management and everything else, or it's any other kind of threat. If these things aren't quantified, then you can't really quantify the maintenance of that system, the protective aspects of that system, and therefore get the proper funding that matches that risk. Therefore, the CEO's vision is going to be in jeopardy. And if we cannot convey this, that's a huge problem. And we have a new wave of CIOs and CISOs out there that are coming from a deeply technical nerd background, believe me. You know, that's where I came from as well. But if we don't have that proper management training, or at least that ability to translate that into essentially the language that the CEO and CFO are going to understand, we're in dire straits. And we keep seeing data breaches all the time. It's not like we're not aware that the world is essentially being attacked. But how we address it, how we handle it, oftentimes is falling onto deaf ears, meaning they're just assuming that their jack of all trades, one size fits all technology solution might actually fit it, along with the department that essentially doesn't have the focus, skills, or specialization in things like cybersecurity or building good cybersecurity architecture or cyber defense strategies. It's a huge problem. It's a really, really a huge problem. So Noah Barsky's article was great in Forbes. I recommend everybody go read it. I gave you 2 paragraphs of probably like 20 in there because I didn't want to just completely rip him off, but I absolutely ripped off his title. I'm not taking credit for that. He's 100% right, but we have to change the language. We have to start really conveying what risk really means to an organization. It's not just when the trucks don't show up with your supply. It's what happens if the entire trucking company is hacked and it's not going to show up for a week. That's what we're talking about here. It's a huge problem. And so if you are an executive and you are non-technical, please make sure you are listening to the executive nerds in your life. And if you are an executive, CIO or CISO, please, please, please learn nerd to English or nerd to whatever language you speak primarily. We need to have that translation. Every organization needs it. Every organization deserves it. Every organization can't live without it. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.